This is the only conference where you really get to rock the shoes. Like, look at us together.
We did not plan this
no.
girl group, but I think we should probably launch something after this together now that we look so cute together.
I'm all in. I think we need to do this. Yes. Well, welcome everyone. I am so excited to see so many faces here to talk about a topic that needs to be talked about every single day. And how amazing is it that it's actually International Women's Day today as we talk about this. So when we talk about maternal health, we have to talk about that period of time, which is one of the most vulnerable times in our lives. And the fact that statistics are showing that over 22 people who are birthing are losing their lives out of 100,000 people. I'm going to repeat that again. 22 lives out of 100,000 are losing their life at the time that they're trying to bring life into the world. And so that's why I'm glad that we're having this conversation and really highlighting the importance of maternal health and even more, what we can do about it. So Elaine, you know, when I think about all of the things that your work has encompassed, how amazing is it that you have found this purpose when it comes to Birth Fund? And I would love to know more about why you decided to do that, especially with all of the things that have been a part of your life.
Gosh. Well, first of all, hi, ladies.
Yes.
And a few good men, including my husband in the room. It's a real honor to be here with you. You do such incredible work in this space. Honestly, if you would have asked me, like, 5 years ago, if I ever saw myself doing something like this, I would have said absolutely not. I did not know anything about maternal health outside of the scary statistics that were shown. And of course, I, like many people, saw Serena Williams' documentary, which was the first time that my eyes were opened to the prevalence of this issue area, and for all of us, right? Like, I think there are a lot of misnomers around maternal health that, like, you know, the maternal mortality crisis is something that's happening out in other countries, but not here, which couldn't be further from the truth. But particularly, people feel like their privilege protects them from becoming a statistic, and we could not be more mistaken. And I think Serena Williams' story illuminates that reality. But still, even with all the warning signs, I think I, like many people, thought when I became pregnant, unexpectedly, on accident, I was like, how hard can this be, right? Like, people give birth all the time. My mom delivered in the hospital, just like my grandmother, just like most of my friends. I'll go find a doctor, deliver in the hospital, give me the painkillers, like, I'll bang this out. Like, that's the attitude that I walked into motherhood with, and I just, it became such an eye-opening experience for me, and such a humbling experience for me to learn how much harder it was to find good quality care, even as someone with resources and the best insurance and access to the best doctors. And I just had bad experience after bad experience after bad experience. And at some point I realized, this is the system, this is not me. And I have to advocate for myself, for my child, to find something better. It really took such a toll on my spirit during one of the most vulnerable times of a woman's life. I think being pregnant is incredibly humbling in ways that I don't think that we are prepared for, really. And so, yeah, for me, finding this alternative pathway to better care for me, holistic, patient-centered care in midwifery, changed not just my birthing experience, but it really, truly changed my life. It was, like going from the dark to the light. Like, I found myself in such disrespected situations in dynamics with doctors who only wanted me in their care if I was willing to give up my power. If I was not, I had doctors tell me that I had exceeded their 3 to 4 question max, and that I needed to leave their office. When I'm asking questions that could be life or death for me, you know?
Right.
I had a doctor tell me, when I was asking, what is your rate for interventions? Because I'm a journalist. I wanna ask the questions that first of all, any woman should be prepared to ask, and any doctor should be prepared to answer in this sort of dating environment when you're trying to find the right care provider for you. And I was laughed at, and I was told that you cannot just walk into a hospital, pop a squat, and have a baby. She's like, I don't know what you think this is. Everybody needs something. When she's talking about something, she meant interventions. And I started to understand how women get into this sort of carousel of interventions that turn into unnecessary emergencies that then claim the lives of too many women. And so I was so grateful to find midwifery care through my network, and it really did. It was like night and day, the difference in care. You know, having extra time, having somebody who really cared about me as a person, somebody who really wanted to look at not just take my vitals, but talk to me about my stressors, understand what I'm eating, understand what I do in the world, and how am I doing mentally.
Right.
You know, there's so much more that goes into maternal health, and midwifery it addresses all aspects of an individual. And so I was able to go from being incredibly disempowered, honestly, at one of my lowest points in my life, at my third trimester, when I did not have a doctor, I did not have a birth plan, I didn't have a place to feel safe giving birth, to finding these midwives who helped me find my power again. They helped me find my voice. They helped me feel confident in my body to the extent that I was able to pop a squat, have my baby in my own home, and the way that women have been doing this since the beginning of time. And so for me, there was a big, kind of an aha moment after going through that journey. And I realized that if I can leverage my skill set as a storyteller, my network, my resources, to help other women have more empowered, dignified birthing experiences, then this is part of why I'm on this planet. This is part of why this happened to me. You know, taking this very, it's a way to channel my anger, honestly. I had a lot of anger about the way that I was treated during that time, but it's been so rewarding to create this safety net of parents and women who are willing to invest in the health and well-being of other women during their most vulnerable time. Yeah.
And when I think of, that storytelling and how that purpose comes from that, I can't help but highlight this is happening across all social economics. That will not protect you. And there is a power dynamic shift from a doctor and a patient, and that should not happen. You should be able to advocate for yourself and ask as many questions as you want to. And when I hear your story, and this is why there's so much synergy, I think about how even as a physician, I almost passed away giving birth in a hospital that I am a medical director at. And I was not heard, I was not listened to. And so why this is so important for people to understand, it is more than a statistic. It is a person's life. And we have to realize that we can do something about this and really having that holistic. And so that's why when we talk about this and we talk about that purpose and we talk about advocacy, you have leaned into being able to put that story forward to help more lives so they can have all of those areas met, because it isn't just one part. It is all parts of birth.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that, and I'm so sorry to hear that you experienced this, but what I have found in doing this work that more often than not, women have traumatic birth stories.
Right.
And when you look at the statistics, it reflects just that. More than 50% of women in this country describe their birth journeys their birth experiences as traumatic. This is the richest country in the world. If we can't figure out how to help women have empowered births, like our priorities are all the way off. And we already knew that. This is not a surprise, right? But I felt like coming from the perspective of a storyteller, as a journalist, as somebody specifically who worked at Teen Vogue at a time where we were able to kind of leverage this fashion lifestyle platform to talk about much deeper issues at the time, and social justice movements and things that you just didn't really expect to come out of a teen magazine. I learned how to leverage some of that storytelling around this issue area to take it out of the fringes, to mainstream this movement, because to me, it's like, when I remember thinking about maternal health as something that was just like, I don't know, just something that didn't relate to me, when it could not be more relevant for all of us. How many of us came from a mom? Like, how many of us have a mom?
Right.
I mean, hello. So it's something that impacts all of us, and I personally know too many women who have lost their lives in childbirth. And when we layer on what's happening right now over the last few years, the reversal of reproductive justice is going to directly impact the numbers that we're seeing of women die during and after childbirth. There's a one-to-one correlation. We are headed into. We are already in a crisis, but the crisis is going to continue surging. And so I really feel charged around this issue that we each have a role to play in being proactive about investing in solutions, not just talking about the problem. And that's what I felt was missing from the conversation around maternal health. I think it's like, you know, we all have probably now heard about the statistics around, you know, the deaths, especially of Black women. There's so much fear-mongering around Black women giving birth. And unfortunately, it's far too common, right, that we are almost losing our lives or losing our lives in childbirth. But I'm sorry, giving birth was one of the most empowering things I have ever done in my whole life, and that's because I had the support system that helped make that rite of passage as a woman something that was transformational in a positive way. And so I felt there was an opportunity to talk about and to lift up solutions that we know about. Midwifery, by the way, you all, can avert over 80% of the maternal deaths in this country. Did you know that? How come they're not telling us that part? Right? Like there's so much fear around giving birth, but they're not telling us what we can be doing to save ourselves. And for me, I feel like I'm living proof of the difference it can make in a woman's life when they have the opportunity to get in touch with their power during childbirth. It's transformational. And midwifery care is what helped take me from becoming a statistic potentially to becoming someone who can help make sure other women have these empowered experiences. Because I really believe also that, you know, you gave the stat at the beginning about how many women are losing their life, but I think a metric we need to be looking at is also how many women are having joyful, empowered birthing experiences through midwifery, and investing in that, and not just in the storytelling, but investing in those resources for women who don't have access to midwifery care. One of the things that I maybe some of you might not know is that midwifery care is the default birth model for all of the other industrialized countries in the world, who are outranking us in an embarrassing way when you look at how much better their outcomes are when it comes to birth. And we are just so left behind. And when I went through my experience with midwifery care and I looked at how much it costs, it is so cost prohibitive in this country because it's not covered by insurance.
Correct.
Which is wild. And so that is essentially why I started Birth Fund, because I wanted to give women and families the opportunity to have a dignified birth experience, supported by other family members, by other folks in the community. And so basically the first thing that I did is I started very, very small. I started with just one-to-one. I was like, if I can personally invest in one other woman's birth experience and make sure that they have the kind of care they deserve, like I will feel good about my birthday this year. I did it on my birthday as a birthday fundraiser, and I invited my community to join me. And I posted it on Instagram, not thinking anyone was gonna like give me any money, and I was just like, I hope somebody cares out there. And 16 hours later, we raised enough to cover the cost of not one but two families.
Which is huge.
And I was like, if this is what we can do in 16 hours with no press, with no big strategy behind us, what could we do if I tapped all the women in my network who are powerful, who are strategic, and who have resources? We could make a movement move. We could save each other.
Yes.
And so one of my first calls was, full circle moment, Serena Williams. And she immediately said yes. I asked her if she would fund a family's birth and if she would join me in posting a fundraiser on Instagram, just like I had done for my birthday, and if she would tap one other person in her network to join our movement. And she said yes, and call my husband, because he needs to invest in this too. So I did, and he said yes. And we basically built a funding circle of 10 women and men, because we need men in this work too. This is not, I mean, it's on all of us to save us, not just women. And we were able to raise collectively, with the support of the Gates Foundation as well as other corporations, we were able to raise over $2.2 million in under a year. And I get chills saying that because I'm still, at moments, I pinch myself when I think about how I felt going through this, how alone I felt, and how I felt like this is not a sexy enough topic that people are going to care about. But guess what? If you build it, they will come. If you have a clear call to action, if you leverage your story and your heart for an issue area, you can be a part of changing the world for the better in your lifetime. I really believe that. I know it sounds so idealistic, but we're doing it every single day at Birthland.
Well, let's give a cheer for that. You know, I'm going to double tap on the fact that when you got pregnant, I remember you sharing that here you were, a very confident, clear, concise woman who knew what she wanted, and then that was stripped when you went to the doctor. And so to be able to put something forward so people can advocate, because how many of us have gone to the doctor and all of a sudden we're like, what is happening? No one's listening to me. I don't even feel like myself. And then if you're pregnant and then you're trying to bring life into the world and you've been double stripped, that shouldn't happen. And to your point, when we think about those statistics and people that are passing away, those are mothers, daughters, sisters, and that lineage has stopped. And I like to go a little bit further. When we talk about traumatic birth, how many women who had that traumatic birth has now decided, I'm not going to have another child? So it goes beyond just death and traumatic, it's twofold. And so what you're doing is you're creating an ability to have that lineage start to elevate and build. And being able to have that advocacy piece to know about there are other options. Because to your point, midwifery isn't often talked about. And it is a value, it is an option that everybody should have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so when
this is coming from a doctor,
I know.
Everyone. I really love, I have to say, it means a lot to me to have this conversation with you because one thing that we're not is anti-doctor. What we are is pro-choice. Women should have access to different alternative choices if the medical system is underserving them. And unfortunately, we know that for too many women and women of color, the hospital isn't necessarily the safest place to give birth. And we don't need to treat birth like an emergency. It isn't. It's the most natural thing. It's what our bodies were built to do. And so I think, ultimately what I would like to see is a world where we have access to hybrid care, where we can get the best midwifery support in the context of a medical center where there are doctors as well, but that midwives are allowed to lead the charge on birth. This is what they've been doing since the beginning of time. Midwives gave birth to this country. Like, these are skilled birth professionals that are like aunties that care for you, that care for these women, and that don't need to be led by the medical system, right? But we also know that there are times when we do need interventions. And so I'd love to see more conversation across the aisle, holistic birth workers in conversation and in coalition with medical professionals like yourself, because I do think it takes both sides to solve this crisis in our lifetime.
It is. It's a team sport where everybody should be a part of. Yes. And that conversation of right away when you come in and you're pregnant, would you like to see a midwife? Yes. Like, let's start that conversation. Yes. Because I think about how you mentioned so many women have no idea that that is an option.
And I was one of them.
And it should be just part of that conversation. And then the other piece that I think that we need to think about are those doctors who are not allowing those questions to happen or making you feel less than if you are like, what else can I do? Yes. And there's so many different options. And my father, and a lot of people are going to be surprised when they hear this. So my dad was 99 years old, and he was delivered by a midwife. So that's one generation away. Yeah. So if we can keep that conversation where we have it at the forefront, well, would you like to see a midwife? That's how we're going to rebuild and enter that conversation of having midwifery a part of the healthcare system. Absolutely. Because it's holistic, but it's also traditional, because that's what we used to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know we have 30 seconds
yes.
left, so I'm being mindful.
So, yes, this is a great conversation. So as we talked about everything, if there's one thing that you would like everybody to take away when we talk about birth justice, what would you like everyone to take away?
What I would just say, my shameless pitch would just be to join us in starting a funding circle. Because what I described to you that I did to start this organization less than a year ago is something that everyone in this room can do. Like, everyone has 10 people in your orbit that you have influence over, whether it's in your church community, your work community, your friend, your social circle. Like, you can gather 10 people and come together and decide that you are going to fund a woman's birth. Because I don't know about you, there are a lot of problems in the world right now, and there's so much that makes us feel paralyzed. But there is nothing more urgent than helping to keep mothers alive, to raise these babies that they're being, in many cases, forced to have before they are ready. And rather than us just feeling the weight of that and the paralysis around what's happening in our country, we can do something about it. And what we call this birth fund, because this is a fund that you can invest in, right? Like this, you can be an investor. I want to change the face of philanthropy as it relates to this issue. I think we all think that we got to rely on Bill Gates and Melinda Gates to solve problems this big. But the reality is, if we each have power, we each can do something about this particular problem. And it comes down to community support. Our tagline is, it's on us to save us. It's on us in this room to save us. So if you have a heart for this issue, if you feel convicted, do something about that. Take that anger, that anguish that you feel about what's happening in the world, and be a part of the solution by getting your people together. We have it's not up here, but we do have a QR code. Erin in the room, please raise your hand. Erin's our director of operations, and she can share the QR code with you on a card. Scan that code, start your funding circle, and let's change the world for the better together, like ASAP, like right now.
Yes.
Like,
and I want to remind everybody here, you have heard two women share their story, who it didn't matter about our social economic. It didn't matter about our privilege. We were still dismissed. And there will be someone in your life that you will find out that will face a maternal health crisis. So when Elaine is talking about this, you may not feel that impact right now, but I promise you, that impact could happen in the future. So taking the opportunity just to save one life is something you can do. So when we hear these statistics, instead hear about what statistic you could change that one life. And that's why I'm so glad we had this conversation today. And I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here.